Yo!
Hey,
How is everyone doing?
pretty good.
I'm glad to hear that, actually.
I'm everyone.
Oh, that's mildly alarming. This month, our patrons voted for us to play something from the developer Salmon Snake, and we decided to look at their visual novel Vengeful Heart. And immediately, I'm struck by how much of an aesthetic this is.
Yeah.
We got tons of we've got pipes and cranks on the pipes and also neon signs, but it's all pink and turquoise and purple and a little bit of green. This is great. I'm all about this.
Let's go.
All characters and events depicted in this visual novel are entirely fictitious. Any similarity to actual events or persons living or dead is purely coincidental.
Totally coincidental.
Totally. Oh, here's the music. Deep in the man-made desert, on one of the few remaining spots where drinkable groundwater remains, there lies a sprawling city.
Don't get addicted to water.
Beginning roughly where the sands end, it rises in layers up the slopes of a great hill. At the peak, skyscrapers jostle and compete for height, while their occupants soar in the helicopters above pristine plazas. I love this already. The bottom, the forgotten dregs of society, scrape together a pitiful existence. And in between, millions live their mundane and precarious lives, gazing hopefully up and fearfully down. Their days are illuminated by the steady glow of overhead pipes carrying the single substance worth more than gold.
Love? Love is the single substance.
It's probably that. Water.
Okay.
And also love. If you read the demo version, you might want to skip straight to chapter 3. Would you like to do so? We have not read the demo version.
Yeah, we have not.
So we're gonna play on through. Thank you. Chapter 1, The City of Neon Pipes.
Sick.
Damn.
I love the animation scene transitions with all
This
the
is
pipes
great.
and shit.
This is great. I'm already all about this.
Yeah.
Josephine Lace was late for work. Cursing, she shot out of bed like a rocket and stumbled into the bathroom. Her apartment was small. There was just enough room for a bed, a table, and a screen. The building itself was pretty old, so most functions only worked through an interface in the wall. Lights, heating, and the alarm she should have had. The screen was newish and large enough to nearly cover the wall it was on. In the bathroom there was a separate panel that dealt with her water supply and washing machine. She'd been thinking about getting one of those roofs that could display a starry sky on request, but they were so expensive. Maybe once she got a raise. She slid and slammed hard against the bathroom wall. Damn, the floor was slippery. She opened the plastic panel and selected soap and shampoo. Of all the days, she thought. Soap began to pour out of the ceiling dispenser, and she lathered her body with the suds. Halfway through, she realized she was still wearing her pajama pants and cursed again. Just as she got them off, and then she realized she was still wearing her wristwatch as well. She threw it across the apartment onto the bed, just in time for shampoo to drizzle down from the ceiling. Closing her eyes, she focused on working the shampoo through her hair. She had to look presentable. Today, she was going to meet Francis. With her eyes still closed, she turned up her face to meet the cleansing stream of water about to come, and waited. A loud beep announced to her that something was wrong. She carefully opened one eye and inspected the small screen. Error. Water could not be delivered. Please contact water supplier. Do you want to be our main character here?
What the fuck?
Fucking company. Someone had screwed up on the worst possible day. Then she got shampoo in her eye.
Fuck.
She had no time to contact anyone. Still half blind, she grasped her towel and wiped off as much soap and shampoo as she could. She considered her options. If she had more time, she could have stopped at a gym or swimming hall, but she didn't, and those were places where people went to get their clothes stolen. There was no way in hell she would ask to use Mr. Kendrick's shower. Not that the old man wasn't perfectly nice, she just didn't know how to speak to old people. She knew nothing about her neighbor across the hall, except that the sign on the door read, Janice. The only real option was to rush to work, shower there, and do her best with makeup. Why did this have to happen on her biggest day yet? Maybe that's just how things go. Pressing another button, she retracted the thin metal curtain shielding her from the neon storm that was the city, embracing the view. The sun was still rising, so she had a chance to appreciate the relentless cacophony of messages trying to get her attention. She'd seen them so many times that she no longer paid them any mind, yet she knew that if even one of the signs went out, she would notice instantly. She turned her gaze to admire the pulsing rainbow that was the network of water pipes running above street level. No other city had this feature.
None of them have water.
No, water is it's a dangerous thing to be.
She's cool.
I haven't seen Mad Max. I got to be honest here.
I
watched Fury Road.
Okay.
But like I feel like I haven't seen any of like the main line of the series.
Fury Road's the one with the water thing though.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
I haven't seen any of the other Mad Max either. I'm also a poser.
Well, there we go. She slipped on her best suit and packed a bag. Yeah, oh my god, she's cool. I like her. There's something about white hair and like in kind of like technological settings, like this look. I don't know if it doesn't look like it's cyberpunk. Definitely sci-fi.
It counts.
Yeah. But
high tech, low life, it counts.
High tech, low. You know what? There you go. Bam. Got it. She slipped on her best suit and packed a bag with makeup and a few nutrition bars. Cooking was definitely out of the question.
I know that feeling.
In her haste, she almost forgot her ID. The block she lived on was a gray slab of concrete and steel that anyone would consider ugly as hell. What? No fans of brutalism here?
Somebody who needs a copy of How to Love Brutalism.
Right? But not Josephine. She liked practical things, and her house was exactly that.
Hey, someone did give her a copy of How to Love Brutalism.
Fist bump! There was a small courtyard surrounded by apartments, and 4 different doorways that led to 4 different streets. There were 8 floors and 4 sections. Every apartment was identical. She was lucky to have one all to herself. She liked the courtyard. It was small, and nothing grew on it. But it was peaceful, at least. In the summer, the program that ran the building deployed a massive shade umbrella that kept much of the apartment pleasantly cool. There was electric air conditioning, of course, but it didn't always work. In the hallway, she ran into Mr. Kendrick. The old man was wearing his morning robe, agitated and milling about as if something was deeply wrong.
Who's gonna be Mr. Kendrick? Should I be Mr. Kendrick? Sure, I'll be.
Yeah. If I'm gonna narrate, I feel like I should take only a few characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Miss Lace, can you help me? My apartment doesn't work. What's wrong with your apartment, Mr. Kendrick? Well, you see, this morning I woke to the sound of the traffic a full 15 minutes earlier than usual. Mr. Kendrick, please, I'm late for work. Oh, I'm sorry. As I was saying, I read the paper and then slept for a bit more. Mr. Kendrick, cut to the chase, please. What's wrong? Oh, yes. You see, when I woke up, I tried to shower, but there was no water. I couldn't even make coffee. So, I came out to see if someone would know about the pipes. Don't you work with pipes, miss? Not really, Mr. Kendrick. Don't worry, I'm sure they'll fix whatever the problem is soon enough. Alright. Oh, one more thing, Miss Lace. Could you please help me with... I have to run now. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Kendrick. Ask someone else, like Mr. Janice.
Who's Ronnie? We don't know this.
Yeah, we don't.
Who's Mr. Janice?
Oh, Himemia Anthe.
I was gonna say, that's the first thing that came to my mind. It's like, oh, Anthe. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Wait, what? Why is Anthe here? A young woman came down the hallway then, a slight smile tugging at her lips.
I love the art style in this game.
The
character art is really good.
The character art is really good, and it has that very kind of late 90s, mid-late 90s kind of anime style to it.
But
that is also like just what I adore.
But also like PC 98 era visual novel.
Yeah,
where it's like you've got the
yeah.
anime art, but it's pixelated due to the low res of the graphics.
Yeah,
and like
it's this. I cannot get enough of this aesthetic.
Yeah, this rules.
She was a bit shorter than Josephine, but clearly worked out much more. Josephine felt a sting of guilt as she tried to remember the last time she'd gone jogging. The young woman had short hair, rough hands, and plain clothes, designed for comfort and practicality, and worn for many years. She seemed simultaneously relaxed and on high alert. I'd worry about her brother. Honestly. Her demeanor couldn't have been calmer as she walked along the corridor, but her eyes were constantly moving, assessing. Her most memorable feature, however, was the amused smile resting so naturally on her face that Josephine was sure it never left. Wherever her eyes looked, they seemed to find something inherently funny in everything and everyone.
I take it you're Miss Janice.
Call me Ronnie. What's the fuss about?
Well, you see, I woke up to the sound of traffic. The water isn't working. Look, Mr. Kendrick, I really need to go now. I have a meeting.
With that, Josephine rushed to the elevator and closed the doors. Must be some meeting.
Miss Janice, please, I locked myself out of my apartment.
Oh, I guess that's my problem now. Would you like a cup of tea? Indeed. Josephine closed her eyes as the elevator descended. She found the electric hum of the machinery soothing. Her stomach grumbled. She hoped there would be time to get a bite to eat. Outside, she took a deep breath of city air and filled her lungs with the smell of exhaust pipes and greasy street meals. It was still rush hour. She joined the high tide of people flooding the streets and flowing towards the trams. Usually, she tried to get up early and bypass the endless ocean of grumpy, tired, and busy people operating on their first cup of coffee. Today, she was somewhat glad there were so many people. No one had the time or energy to focus on her. Speaking of first cup of coffee... No one would see her shower hair disaster or notice yesterday's clothes. Adrift in the sea of people, she was invisible. She stepped into a puddle. Cold, filthy water instantly soaked through her shoes and socks, chilling her toes.
Crap!
A trickle of water fell on her head. She looked up. There was a water pipe above her. It was leaking badly. The pipe was too high to make out the company name, but she knew it was Nephthys. The colors had been Francis's idea. Water pipes in the city had long ago been rebuilt to run high above the streets. It was too easy to drill and steal from underground lines. The black metal tubes running in rows above all major streets weren't very pretty to look at. Francis had come up with the idea to replace them with transparent plastic. Then he'd added glowing chemicals to the water so that, as it flowed, it pulsed in vibrant hues.
I see.
Brand approval had skyrocketed, and the claims of potential health hazards were tenuous at best. Now the pipes were a symbol of the city that no one would want removed. Francis was a genius.
I'm imagining making your coffee with, like, the glowing green water.
Green coffee is best coffee.
But it, like, glows in your cup and, like, is this horrible, muddy, greenish brown.
I'm reminded of a really, really distressing historical anecdote.
Yeah?
Where, someone was able to backtrack the source of a disease to a single water pump.
Oh, the cholera pump handle thing.
Yeah, and one of the cases that was really far away, they asked, like, hey, are you getting your water from this pump? And they're like, yeah, oh yeah, I make sure to go down to that pump instead of our closer one. My mom says it just tastes sweeter. And I'm like, this coffee tastes sweeter. Anyway, sorry for the aside, I guess. And the pipes were everywhere. It was impossible not to notice them. For the last few years, the entire city had lived on the warm glow of neon lights, safe from rain under the blanket of pipes. It had led to some interesting incidents. For one, advertisers had complained that people could no longer see their ads. The solution had been devilishly simple. For a price, Nephthys installed a device that turned off the glow on certain sections, giving people a better view of the huge billboards. Last year had been decided that the city would no longer maintain streetlights. Why would it? Nephthys was providing plenty of light on its own and asked only for a modest fee in return. Everybody won. Suddenly, she noticed someone standing still next to her. It was an old woman, clearly too poor to have an apartment in this district. She was holding a plastic canister.
You shouldn't steal.
You cop? Is Josephine going to be a cop? The old woman shrugged. Josephine didn't have time to argue. She continued toward the station. The old woman wasn't alone. There were at least half a dozen others, all with bottles or pots. The police would show up soon, and it was smarter not to be around when they did. Excuse me. The tram station was actually two stations. There was the subway leading downtown and the tram leading uptown. Josephine was one of the millions who worked farther uptown than they could ever afford to live. She got in line for the trams. The tram had a security checkpoint, the subway didn't. She didn't have to wait for long. There were at least 20 machines, and it took less than a second to identify a passenger. There were also at least 10 security guards. Josephine nodded to the closest one, but received no response. Hidden behind their black masks, the endlessly stoic security personnel might as well have been robots. Josephine showed her ID to the machine, then looked straight into the camera. Josephine Lace, hydraulic engineer, Nepthys Incorporated, cleared for passage, intoned a metallic but pleasant voice. Oh, that was supposed to be a pleasant voice. Whoops. A green light flashed and the doors opened. Josephine ran for the platform. As usual, the tram was absolutely packed with frowning people. Very few spoke at all. Guards were pushing people in to fit as many as possible. Josephine quickly slipped her wallet under her shirt and covered her watch with the other hand. Pickpockets loved the tram. They weren't the kind of pickpockets seen in movies either, not rugged poor people with quick fingers. You needed to have a reason to go uptown. These were neatly dressed, part-time pickpockets. She'd lost 2 watches before she learned how to be careful, though. Generally, pickpockets overwhelmingly favored tourists. There was just something about outsiders, especially countrysiders, that made them an obvious target. The tram shot forward with rush-hour speed, and Josephine would have fallen if there had been space to do it. The neon lights and towering buildings flashed by. The only constant was the glowing water pipe running along the tram route. It was foggy again. Josephine checked the air quality on her watch. She should have been wearing a mask, too. The air was not good, but at least it would be better at the other end. The tram route ascended at a steep angle. There were handrails above that one could grab for support. Josephine wasn't that dumb, though. Holding onto the rail meant lowering your guard, which in turn meant someone would steal your stuff. She would have to maintain her own balance. At every station, the route leveled for a bit so that people could get out, and a new batch could come on board. Josephine couldn't help but feel a little superior to the people who got off before her. She worked at the very center, almost as uptown as one could get. The tram was almost empty when Josephine got out. She instantly noticed how the air was different here. It didn't smell and there was no smog. Instead, the rising sun shone brightly on the white and glass buildings. Even the water pipes had stopped glowing. Up here, water was clear. She didn't have time to ponder it. She bolted and ran as fast as she could. Wow, she's running a deck with both ponder and bolt? Someone's running, is it?
Yeah, that sounds like Delver.
Down where she lived, which was still comfortably near the middle, the streets were crowded and narrow. Here, there were only plazas and huge monumental buildings. And the gardens were one of the biggest. It was impossible to miss them. The headquarters of Nepthys Inc. was not just a cold giant clad in steel and glass. It was verdant and lush. It was called the Gardens because of the numerous terraces that were green with plant life of all sorts. Trees, bushes, and bushes. God damn it. Bushes and vines covered the outer walls. Between the terraces, thin screens of water fell from one level to the next, giving some privacy to the people working within. The main building itself was like a pyramid of huge steps. The higher your elevator took you, the smaller the floor, and the more exclusive. Today, Josephine would go to the top for the first time, and she had shampoo in her hair. The gardens were surrounded by a plaza where more trees and bushes stood on the artificial ground, fed by artificial little streams. The streams crisscrossed the grounds in a seemingly random pattern, combining into small ponds and then separating again. Josephine was in a hurry, so she didn't follow the winding path around the fake garden. She hopped over the ponds and ran across the lawn, raising eyebrows among the security guarding the entrance. Guards said nothing, but their eyebrows climbed even higher as the sweaty and gasping Josephine arrived at the machine, and it cleared her. Her heart was pounding like crazy. I really should work out more, she thought. Inside was calm. People were either in their offices or hadn't shown up yet. Good. Perhaps no one would see her. There was a shower attached to the gym. Josephine liked working at a place where there was a gym just for the employees. There was a certain prestige to it, not that she ever had the time to use it. She looked at her watch. 9 minutes. It might be enough. There was no one else using the elevator. Good. The gym was on the 4th floor. She waited anxiously as the elevator slowly began to rise. She had a hard time standing still. She saw herself in the mirror. The shampoo had now dried on her hair, forming a white net of sorts. Her cheeks were red from running, and her eyes shadowed dark from a nearly sleepless night. She'd been having those recently. Her nose was leaking like the water pipe on her home street. On the 2nd floor, the elevator stopped, and she quickly adjusted her pose to look casual. Everyone had days like this. It wasn't anyone's business. The doors opened, and a young man walked in. Josephine froze. It was Francis. Good God! Look at Francis!
Busy morning, Miss Lace.
Oh, perfect.
No, sir. I mean, yes, but nothing unusual. Just ran my morning rounds. I'm going to shower now. Exercise before work is so refreshing. I go swimming every morning. Do you swim?
Oh, swimming would be a status symbol, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like you could afford to have so much water that you could get in it.
Yeah, afford to have so much water to just waste it.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. Swimming also means a different thing if you're trans, but you know.
Not very well, I'm afraid. I'm more of a sunbather.
I do also enjoy me some Def Heaven.
Have you heard their latest album? It is really a genre switch. They went dream pop. I don't blame you, the pool water is freezing. Anyway, I hope your presentation is ready. Yes, sir. I'll pop by my office to pick up the slides. You might want to hurry. It seems you have 6 minutes.
Josephine was horrified. She wouldn't make it. Not through a shower, getting dressed, putting on makeup, and going by her office. Francis laughed.
Worry not, Miss Lace. I'll go by your office and stall the meeting. Where are the slides? Thank you so much, sir. I left them on a drive at my desk. I'll be there on time. Thanks again. No trouble at all. You just get ready.
Wow, Francis, legit. Okay. I kind of assume from his, like, and smug superior, but if he's going to do us a solid, then all right, sure.
To be fair, we don't necessarily know that he's really going to do us a solid. Josephine, this is your floor. The ladies' showers are to the right.
Francis was right. They were on the 4th floor. She rushed out, thanking him again and blushing red as a traffic light.
Oh, Miss Lace?
Josephine turned around, more or less dying of embarrassment.
Yes? You might want to wear sports clothes when you run. You'll be much more comfortable. Thank you, sir.
The doors closed before she could finish, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. She made a complete fool of herself. Why today? As she finally showered, she couldn't stop thinking about Francis. Francis Brabeck was a celebrity among businessmen. He was young, he was ambitious, and he seemingly never made mistakes. In just 6 years, he'd made Nephthys the largest water provider in the world. By all accounts, he should have been a huge dick. And yet here he was, a billionaire boss offering to help a subordinate out of sheer goodwill at the cost of working time. And damn, he was handsome. Josephine toweled herself off and got dressed. She didn't have time to dry her hair. She hastily put on some makeup in the elevator. She was late. There was a security check in the elevator before anyone could get to the highest floor. Josephine's ID had been temporarily updated to allow access. She arrived 2 minutes late, but no one seemed to mind. She realized they were kind of people who were never in a hurry. They knew others would wait. The men and women in the room, all wearing neat suits, were chatting and having coffee. Francis was among them, clearly mid-joke.
Miss Lace, good, you've arrived. It's time to start, I think.
Francis gestured for Josephine to sit at the empty chair next to him. The meeting room was the highest point in the gardens, and one of the highest in the city. It was oval and encircled by a balcony. The walls were made up of clear glass. A sheet of falling water, the highest of the waterfalls in the gardens, encircled the room, slowly disappearing in one section while appearing in the next. The effect was quite hypnotic, but the most spectacular part was the view. From up here, Josephine could see the golden domes of City Hall, the luxurious Mansa Musa finance towers, and even the gray HQ of Sentinel Security. Everything was bathed in the rays of the early morning light. She was so high up now that frost formed on the edges of the windows. Far below, she could see swarms of people traversing the plazas, each of them rushing to work in one of the magnificent structures. There were helicopters in the sky, whisking the wealthiest straight from the penthouse to office. In the center of town, there weren't even billboards. Everything was pure. Francis's voice snapped her back to the office.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Josephine Lace. Miss Lace is one of our foremost hydraulic engineers.
Josephine smiled and nodded to the audience of 24 business sharks. All of them looked friendly, but in the way a carnivorous plant might look beautiful.
Josephine is going to explain our new discoveries regarding groundwater. But before that, let's take a step back.
Everyone steps up from their chairs and takes a step.
I want to ask you all, what is the greatest weapon a dictator can possess?
The room was both baffled and annoyed. Clearly, political theory was not worth the time for these people.
The obvious answer would be nukes or gas or some other horrific contraption. But I would argue that the mightiest weapon a tyrant can have is control of resources, namely, of water.
There were more confused faces now, including Josephine's.
Being able to decide who gets to drink, who gets to wash, who gets to water their crops, etc., is absolute power. Starvation and disease can subdue populations far more efficiently than bombs. In times past, this meant filling up wells, damming rivers, and destroying irrigation. Today, all one has to do is press a button. Now I ask you, is that a power you want the state to have?
Some of the audience began nodding approvingly.
Me neither. It is the great task of our generation to liberate water from the control of governments. Water is a human right. The only way to protect the people from abuse is to put the water in the hands of the people. Fortunately, we live in a democracy. Fortunately, we live in a society. And our leaders understand that it is their responsibility to give up this power for everyone's sake.
Oh, I don't get it. What's the reference?
Which is why, starting yesterday, Nephthys will begin the process of transferring control of the groundwater from the state to the people. And who can distribute the water more efficiently to everyone than those who are already doing it?
Oh, God. Okay. No, we already see all the ways in which this goes bad, right?
Well, no one.
The shareholders gave a long applause for their young prophet. Clearly, they had the time for this particular brand of political theory. Francis calmed them down.
Of course, there will be some initial costs. Fortunately, we will soon be responsible for far more water than you might realize. Josephine, if you would.
Josephine stood up and nodded to the audience. Her graphs appeared on one of the windows.
Thank you, Francis. I mean, Mr. Brabeck. Now, as you can see here.
The presentation wasn't long. Josephine delivered a very concise account of all the things to consider with the new water resources. New reservoirs of groundwater had indeed been discovered underneath the city. With them, water shortages could be eliminated altogether. The highest cost involved was real estate. Land in the city was incredibly expensive, yet it was most efficient to drill there. A new central water supply would also be needed. A building that would be a drilling station, purification plant, bottling station, and the starting point of all new pipes. She knew it sounded boring, but she couldn't mask her own excitement over it. How the city got its water would be changed forever, and she would be the one designing it. When she'd been given the task a year ago, it had seemed impossible. She wasn't even 30 yet. How was she in charge? But she had pulled it off. No one could take that pride from her, even though no one else in the world probably cared. The board, for one, seemed only interested in the last section, which wasn't even Josephine's work, but a cost-benefit analysis from someone in finances. They were happy enough to applaud her as well. As the audience was leaving, satisfied that their money was being used adequately well, Francis approached her.
Well done, Josephine. Few could have kept their cool when meeting people this important.
Josephine felt her cheeks heat.
Thank you, Mr. Brabeck. I thought it was a bit dry. Probably could have used some jokes. And how many jokes are there to be made about plumbing?
6.
Oh, good. Not very many, but still, I couldn't captivate them the way you do. Captivating investors is what I do for a living, but you have no reason to feel bad. What you're doing is revolutionary in our field. Within a couple of months, everyone in the city, millions of people, will get their every glass of water from your pipes. I know that. That's what bothers me. Our work is going to change the city forever. We're going to erase dirty drinking water and make it accessible to everyone. They didn't seem to realize it. Investors, at least the successful ones, have a calculator for ears, brain, and heart. The only part they see is the money they'll make. I could speak of liberal ethics all day, and they would only hear numbers. Instead of art, they see price tags. Instead of food, calories to fuel the calculator. That's something that someone with your upward career trajectory would do well to remember. Their eyes only ever see dollars. You make them sound like robots, and they might hear you. Nah, they've already gone, and I mean it as a compliment of sorts. They are the best at what they do, and what they do is best suited for robots.
Ah! Okay, that's kind of a really, that's a great bird. Ah!
You speak like you have nothing in common with them, Mr. I have a degree in finance. Corporate slave or not, I can still enjoy a good meal. Speaking of which, would you like to have dinner sometime?
Oh my. Was Francis asking her out? How is this going so well for her?
Yes, I would love to. Something ridiculously expensive and low on nutrients. So we can see if we're still more than machines. I like it. How about the day after tomorrow? Sure. I mean, I have to check. Of course. My secretary will be in touch. May I have my chauffeur pick you up? That sounds very nice. I'll see you then.
She left the room in a hurry before she could embarrass herself and ruin her good fortune. Francis had asked her out. She hoped his secretary wouldn't spread the news. Half the women in the office would hate her immediately. The rest of the day flew by in a heartbeat. In fact, time passed by so quickly that Josephine found herself working much later than she was supposed to. Of course, there was plenty of work to do. The expansion had to be planned, and miles of new pipes had to be built. As the clock struck 6, she suddenly realized how hungry she was. She hadn't eaten anything after her very abrupt breakfast. She ordered food to the office and kept working until dark. By the time she left, there was no one else on her floor. That last tram bringing people had already come. On the subway, which only went down, ran through the night. Oh, only the subway, which only went down, ran through the night. Got it. Okay. The upper district's need for cheap labor had been satisfied for the day, and now it was time for the plebeians to leave. Normally, she hated the subway. They were dirty, noisy, and there was no security. From her seat, she could see the gardens rising above much of the city. To think that she'd been on top of that building just hours ago. The waterfalls around the tower spread out like a vertical lake, casting back the lights of the city in the sheen of the water. She could even see the reflections of the surrounding buildings. It was like a mirror that made everything seem more beautiful than it was. Josephine squinted her eyes. She was almost certain she could still see the silhouette of a man in the highest room, surrounded by a halo of neon light. Was Francis still working? The subway dove into a tunnel before she could be sure. She suddenly found herself filled with a deep dissatisfaction. Francis wouldn't have to travel downtown for the night. He would stroll just across to the plaza to a luxury hotel where he was permanently lived. Before that, he might catch dinner with all those investors from the meeting at some local restaurant. And in the morning, he would take the elevator back to the top, stopping only for his morning swim. What should have been a pleasant trip home suddenly felt like falling into the deepest abyss on the planet. She'd been to the top, and she wanted to get back there. Her break was close, she could feel it. The new water network was going to be by her design. She was going on a date with her boss. In the crystal ball that was a subway window, she saw a promotion in her future.
She's absolutely being set up to be a patsy and take the fall for something.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
What I'm distracted by is these two sets of 3 lines here in which you could make a cool S if you wanted to. After all, Francis himself had spoken of her upward trajectory. She'd been dealt a good hand. Now she just had to play it well. Yeah, the most logical thing is that she's going to be set up as a patsy. The streets in her home district were almost empty. Food trucks and cabs and automated stores were still open, but not many customers sought their wares. There was the occasional drunken in the back alleys, though hardly visible, some shadier figures. They were the type that tended to show up after dark and hung out in well-guarded areas, trying hard not to be noticed. And it seemed someone had fixed the leaking water pipe. There were no thieves in line anymore. Yeah, the way she refers to them as thieves in her internal monologue. She's, drunk the Kool-Aid at this point, huh?
She's drunk the Kool-Aid, but not to the extent of, say, Francis and the Investors.
Oh no, not to the same extent, but she's definitely our heroine here is mired in that mindset.
Yeah.
Hold right there, someone shouted suddenly. Josephine froze. She owned a taser, but had accidentally left it at home in her rush that morning. Name, occupation, and place of residence, please. It was cold and robotic, but a man's voice nonetheless. A tired man who'd been standing there all day. A security guard. Josephine let out a deep sigh of relief.
Josephine Lace, hydraulic engineer at Nepthys Incorporated. I live right there, across the street.
He gestured at her to show her papers. Josephine could see now that he was a young man, probably younger than her. He seemed nice enough. Josephine held her ID up to the small machine the man was holding. It cleared her. Alright, sorry, you can go. Sorry for the inconvenience, Miss Lace. Say, you wouldn't know what the commotion in your building's all about, would you?
Commotion? No, I'm just getting home from work.
The guard shrugged. There's been noises all evening. Probably nothing, though. Good night, then. Josephine frowned as she hastened her steps towards home. What she found wasn't just a commotion in the courtyard, it was everyone. Mr. Kendrick was there, and so was the family from the third floor, and everyone else she'd ever seen before, as well as many she hadn't. Someone had even brought garden chairs to the yard. Obviously, this was an emergency meeting of sorts for the residents. People were talking on top of one another in angry voices, as if everyone was a manager giving instructions. Except no one was.
What the hell is going on?
There hasn't been any water since last night.
What? It's still off?
Yeah, and it's getting suspicious. I asked around and no other building has this problem.
So the problem would have to be in this building, in our pipes.
You know something about pipes?
A thing or two.
Josephine looked at her neighbor again. She spoke in a quiet, almost distant voice.
I didn't really introduce myself this morning. Lace, Josephine Lace.
Ronnie Janice, Sergeant.
You're with the military?
Was. Now I'm just grumpy because I haven't showered today.
I hear you. I had to shower at work.
And you'll have to again tomorrow if something isn't done. There's been no response from the company yet.
Well, the most likely reason is a failure in one of the contamination seals.
Who, what now?
It's a door that closes if it detects something that shouldn't be in the drinking water. Seal closes, and the water in the pipe is pulled back to be sanitized.
Okay, so what's the deal with you and pipes? No one knows that much about water ducts.
I'm a hydraulic engineer. I design the pipes.
I see. So would you be able to fix the problem if you saw it?
No way. I mean, I could, probably, but I'm not going into the maintenance shaft.
Why not? Seems like there's a job to be done.
I don't like tight spaces. I'm claustrophobic.
So that means she's putting up with a whole lot on the tram ride up.
Yeah.
You mean like elevators?
Elevators are fine. Anything smaller and I can't breathe.
Why don't we go down together? I can hold your hand if you like.
Can you also carry me out if I hyperventilate?
You bet I can.
Can you, carry me out regardless? Just to see what it's like.
So, I could, but why?
No reason.
Okay, sure. Josephine shuddered at the idea. The only way to access the pipes in the building was through a maintenance walkway between the walls, which was dark, damp, and most of all, cramped. Josephine looked around. She could feel the tension in the courtyard. The residents were really on edge, and all they'd had to deal with was not showering for a day.
Well, it doesn't look like they're going to achieve anything here. I get they're pissed off, but why are they yelling?
They're scared. People who are so used to comfort, they sometimes forget how artificial it is. Take away power, the net, or water, and suddenly everyone realizes how close they really are to cavemen.
I'm in this picture and I don't like it.
Yeah, right?
Shut off my internet for 15 minutes and I die.
Literal death. They get doubly scared when no one in the system seems to care. Should we check the pipes and bring them some comfort?
In a moment.
She climbed atop a trash can and clapped her hands. It had no effect. One old man looked at her, then went back to arguing with his neighbor. Listen up! Ronnie had a drill sergeant's voice. People listened to it. Suddenly, Josephine had her neighbor's attention. It was frightening.
Evening, I'm Josephine. I live on the 4th floor. I know we're all mad, but this is no one's fault. We need to stay calm. I'm an engineer. Sergeant Janice and I are going to the maintenance section to check the pipes. It would be great if some of you went to the store and bought as many bottles of water as you can. That way, all of us can at least get something to drink while we try and clear up this mess.
A man stood up. He was in his 50s, had a belly that was obviously made of beer, and mean-looking moist eyes.
Can you fix this? I have kids who need to wash. I'll try my best, but I can't promise anything. If nothing else works, I'll call some people I know. See if they can figure it out.
The man nodded approvingly.
Well then, I'll go to the shops if someone will help me carry the canisters.
Mr. Kendrick stood up as well.
There used to be a well a block from here, water enough for everyone. I think they covered it, but it's still there.
Great, we'll open the well and carry us back some water.
No, don't open the well.
Why not? It's a public well.
It's an Nephthys well. We can't go stealing.
Since when can you own a well? Water comes from the ground.
Since yesterday.
Ronnie's gonna have to try real hard here. The maintenance section was just as dark as Josephine had imagined, and even more cramped. It was an empty space in the southeast corner of the building, running all the way from the ground to the roof. There was a basement in the building, but a basement was no use if all the pipes were running up at ceiling level. The downside was that some apartments no longer had windows. The air was heavy and carried a rotting smell. There were no windows. Why would there be? Only plumbers ever came here. The pipes ran high up to the 8th floor. The only way there was by ladder from the very bottom, and then along a narrow bridge that was nearly the length of the building.
I can't even see the pipes from down here.
Don't worry, I got a light.
Oh, smoke 'em if you got 'em.
I did before, but then the water got caught on fire, so I stopped doing that.
Okay.
Ronnie pointed her sturdy army flashlight up. They could just make out the water pipes, but only barely.
Strange.
Is she going to discover that they were lying to her, that they've been lying to people about what the nature of the water pipes and
I don't know.
how the water actually works? What is...
The water has glowing chemicals in it. It should reflect back the light. Unless the pipe is completely empty.
Guess we'll have to climb and see, eh? Ronnie seems strangely pleased with the situation.
Don't we have a cleaner or something? This climb is ridiculous.
It'll be fine. The ladder looks safe enough. Just come right after me.
Actually, I'm going to have to go first.
Look, I know I said I would carry you, but I might not be able to catch you if you fall.
I have to check the pipes, remember?
Oh, yeah. Well, don't worry about it. There's a ledge up there. So unless you're scared of heights, too.
Well...
Oh, try not to look down.
Ah!
The climb was excruciating. Ronnie couldn't use her flashlight when climbing, so they just had to feel their way up. The ladders were at least built in sections. At each floor there was a small pad for resting and to catch any falling workers. The ladders themselves were made of cold steel and somehow really slippery, even though there wasn't supposed to be water anywhere in the building. I was gonna say her floor was wet today as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Drops of water even fell on Josephine while she ascended slowly. But the height wasn't really the problem. It was the space. 4 separate times, Josephine tried to lean back to see how much room there was behind her. Every time, she instantly hit the wall. The wall in front of her was the only thing she could see clearly. It was slick with mold and way too close to her face.
How is there so much mold here? Is our building really in this bad shape? Do we seriously not have a cleaner?
People are expensive. I think there's a program doing the rounds in all the systems, but I can't see mold.
Someone should rebuild this section with an elevator.
Damn right. Hey, why were you in such a rush this morning?
Honestly, I was trying to impress my boss.
Did it work?
Well, he asked me out, so I guess it did.
Whoa! He did what?
No, it was in a good way. I was hoping he would.
Alright, well good for you then. 10 out of 10. High five.
I suppose. How was Mr. Kendrick?
Forgot his keys.
Again? Crap. Was he mad at me?
Nah, just confused. I invited him for tea, which I couldn't make without water. We got the program to open his door around noon.
So quickly? For me, it always takes forever, even with the identification and all.
I picked up some computer tricks when I was deployed. He began to annoy me as soon as we ran out of war stories.
I've hosted him too. He has good and bad days.
Well, today he just went on about how immigrants steal jobs from veterans like me and him. I think he heard it on TV. I don't think he realized I'm Indian.
I'm so sorry about that. I had a really important meeting and I didn't realize he'd forgotten his keys again and,
Watch out, there's something sharp.
That sounded like me.
Oh god. I found it too. And they climbed on, resting at every interval. Josephine could see that Ronnie could have gone much faster than her. For one, she kept hitting her behind with her head. At the 5th floor, they took a long break.
So you were in the army?
Yeah, Engineer Corps, 3 years.
Engineer? Are we in the same business?
Well, I can't lay water pipes. I can blow them up, though.
I guess the army has different needs.
Spent most of my time protecting oil and gas pipes from insurgents.
So you just walked around with a gun?
Drove. Then we laid electric fences and built launch pads for drones. At night, we would watch the fireworks.
I assume that's army slang for something bad.
You would be right. The rebels would sneak in at night, and if the drones caught them, well, fireworks. To be honest, we rarely caught them, though.
That sounds rough.
Army life's supposed to be rough, but that's in the past. Now I mostly do security jobs here.
Doesn't that feel like a downgrade? To protect people and then be a security grunt?
Never said I protected people. What I do now isn't that different from what I did then, just far less dangerous.
So what?
Oh my god, I sounded like you.
Piss.
So what did you do again? Something with pipes?
We should get going. 3 more floors to go.
Working for a water company wasn't a popular job to be in today, Josephine thought. There was indeed a ledge at the end of the top of the ladder, a thin ledge that had weak railings and a see-through floor. They could see the contamination seal from where the ladder ended, but it was at least 100 meters away. Josephine felt her muscles freeze as she grabbed the thin metal bars of the railing. She knew she wouldn't fall, on some rational level anyway. She couldn't care less about the rational level. Her feet would barely move, only by inches. Her breathing was so loud she could hear it echoing back at her. Down was so far away. The fact that she couldn't see all the way there just made it worse. Her intestines felt like they were doing cartwheels.
I forgot how much I hate heights.
Want me to go first?
No, if you try to pass me by, I'll die.
Suddenly she felt a hand on her shoulder. The grip was firm and strong. You can do it, just keep going.
Gee, I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me.
And Josephine did. She kept her eyes locked on the seal, a black lump with some red lights around it.
This is why we invented machines.
To avoid heights?
Yeah, for that specifically. First we invented pipes so no one would have to climb the mountains for fresh water. And then everything else.
Like airplanes and choppers and parachutes?
Those we invented to weed out the stupid.
You know, I was actually a paratrooper for a while.
I thought you were an engineer.
I had an eventful career. Ronnie's hand was very comforting. Chatting with her was too. By the end, Josephine almost wasn't mortified anymore.
Thanks for coming up here.
Thank you for taking me. I can't stand crowds.
Me neither. Can you shine the light?
I'm just now getting a better look at her jacket, and mentally in my head, I'm reading it as like a hunter's jacket. You know what I mean? Like I'm pretty sure it's meant to be like a red leather jacket,
yeah.
but like the color scheme is getting to me. Ronnie pointed her right to the contamination vent. Josephine was stunned. It couldn't be. Not so soon. And why here? There's no plans for this area. What is it?
The vent is open. There's no water on either side. There is no contamination. We've just been cut off.
What? Why? Before Josephine could answer, both their watches buzzed at the same time. It was from the water company, from Nephthys. They climbed down in silence and went back to the yard where everyone was still gathered. Water had been bought, but nobody was in an especially cheerful mood. Many had returned to their homes. The message sent had been brief, nothing but an automated update from Bot. Dear resident, your water supply has been temporarily suspended until company standards are met. We regret the inconvenience. Yours, Nephthys Incorporated. Dear resident, the conditions of your water contract have been updated to match company standards. You can view your new contract at mywater.com. Yours, Nephthys Incorporated. It was ridiculous. The new company standards were customized according to a customer's credit rating, water consumption, and other relevant factors. Soon enough, it became evident what those relevant factors were. Every single resident in the building failed to meet one condition. Owner not reliable. Property must be owned by an insured and certified entity. See link for options. They were only 80% reliable.
Huh.
I checked the list. All of them are subsidiaries of Nephthys. Is the water company trying to buy the city?
Not the city, just this building.
The residents were getting riled up again, this time faster. This is criminal. We can sue them. I know why they don't trust us, because the slut in 14B who spends hours in the shower.
Oh, it's that old Thatcher and her bloody 15 dogs.
Don't you blame my dogs, at least they shower.
Can you make them shut up again?
Sure thing. Shut up! Let Miss Lace explain. Josephine found herself on top of the trash can once again.
Stay calm, everyone. I know why they're doing this. They want to buy the whole building.
Someone stood up. Did we just sell? I know we said we could sell your home in just 3...
Not if we want to live here. They want this location, not the building. They're going to tear it down and build a central water supply here. This shouldn't be happening. There has to be some kind of a mistake. There must be something we can do. If we can get Nephthys to negotiate...
Can't we just get another water supplier? A competitor? What's that Mexican company? Tlaloc? Ask them for an offer. People began nodding approvingly.
No good. Nephthys owns Tlaloc, and Ande, and Vela. They own every water supplier there is.
How do you know so much about water companies?
Because I work at Nephthys.
Aside from the predictable gasps, there was a disturbing silence. People looked at her the way you looked at someone who maybe just made a bad joke, but it's hard to be sure.
As I said before, I'm a hydraulic engineer for Nephthys. They just bought all the groundwater in every water distribution channel in the city. They're drilling new wells.
So you knew this was going to happen?
No, I mean, not here. This wasn't supposed to happen anywhere even close to here.
But it was going to happen somewhere, to someone.
You're not listening. We can't sell the building to them. We'll all be homeless. I don't know about you, but I can't afford another place.
Maybe you should have thought about that before you let them do this.
I didn't make this call.
Though I did draw the plans for it, and was proud of them, Josephine thought to herself.
I honestly don't know what to tell you. Nephthys isn't a bad company. This shouldn't be happening. If we sell, I'll be homeless too.
But you know these people, right? Could we use that?
I don't think so. Nephthys is run by good people, but their investors only care about dollars and reputation. My niece is a reporter at Horse and Hound magazine. She can make a story about us, strike a blow to their reputation.
She might not have the, clout to make our situation get enough notice.
Yes, she does. She won an award this year for Best Crossword. I'm sure she's a great reporter, Mr. Kendrick, and I like your idea even more. We can make this public.
Why would we want to hear your ideas? Someone shouted.
Well, she's definitely smarter than you are.
Someone else shot back.
Listen, if we can get water from elsewhere and make the press take an interest, they might back down and look for another place. At the very least, they'll realize they can't pressure us and will offer us a decent price.
You said yourself that would be stealing.
Not if we collect rainwater. Nobody owns rainwater.
And how would we do that? Place buckets outside for the night? Josephine thought for a moment. In retrospect, she probably should have come up with a plan before she opened her mouth. She looked up.
The shade umbrella. If we hack it, we can use it to direct water down into the yard.
Into buckets?
If we disinfect the trash containers, we can use them as water tanks.
And if it doesn't rain? Yeah, it doesn't rain in 6 months. It would be a miracle if it happened now.
We'll buy water in bottles until it does rain.
Someone else stood up.
That's stupid. We would break the building and then give more money for the company that's trying to screw us over.
Yeah, how do we know you're not just trying to get us to go thirsty so we'll have to sell our place cheap? Josephine had seen it coming. She needed to make them trust her. There really wasn't another way. They stole water, the company could call the police. They submitted they could be on the streets, still without water. Josephine thought about the water thieves she'd seen that morning and shuddered. Tomorrow she could be one of them. Her neighbors were clearly waiting for an answer.
I know this is difficult. I don't know what will make you trust me, but what choice do we have? If we sell now, we'll all have to move downtown or live on the streets. I don't know who at Nephthys made this call, but if we stick together, we can make that jerk lose their job. Nephthys will realize their mistakes sooner or later. We have to pull together. We have to make a call, and everyone has to abide by it. They only need half of us and one to sell, and then they can just evict the others. Wait, so this building is tenant-owned?
Oh!
Interesting, so the dystopia is less dystopia than most apartment buildings already, huh?
Strange.
Please, trust me. I've known Miss Lace since she moved in. I trust her.
Mr. Kendrick sat back down with a very determined look on his face. The others, however, did not seem very impressed. Josephine looked at Ronnie. Ronnie was the only other person in the building she'd ever spoken to aside from Mr. Kendrick. Ronnie looked right back at her. Josephine realized she was being evaluated. After a few moments, Ronnie nodded and spoke. I went up the maintenance section with her. She's claustrophobic and afraid of heights. She wouldn't have gone if she were a spy. I believe her, and I believe her plan. The shade made a loud creaking noise as it opened. Josephine had always thought it looked terrifying from below. She was down with the others, disinfecting the trash cans. The garbage had been dumped against a wall. Waste disposal was not a priority. At least not that kind of waste disposal. Many people had come to ask her how they would flush their toilets. Josephine had no answer yet. So far, the easiest way was just to find a restaurant and use the toilet there. Ronnie was up on the roof. She had hacked the building easily enough, getting the shade to open despite the cold weather and dark clouds. Josephine wasn't sure she actually had to be up there, but Ronnie seemed to enjoy a whiff of danger. With great moaning and complaining the shade opened at last, spreading out over the darkness like a black curtain. Only as the shade covered the sky did Josephine realize how late it actually was. She wasn't sure, but it was definitely past midnight. And yet almost everyone was still up and working. Even Mr. Kendrick was there, though he couldn't actually do much. But the spirit of resistance seemed unbroken. The residents were determined to stay and fight for their moldy concrete home. Josephine's watch buzzed.
Ronnie, what's up?
The shade's up, that's what, but it's tilted the wrong way.
What?
It doesn't direct the water into the yard, but on the roof and into the drain.
Crap, can it be adjusted?
Not without breaking something. Permission to break something?
Are you sure it won't just crash down on top of us?
Nope. Could you evacuate the yard real quick, just for a bit?
I'm not sure I like this plan.
Any other suggestions?
Could we move the trash cans to the roof? Collect the water from there?
It would be much less efficient. We'd have to spread them. A lot of water would get wasted.
You're right. Fine, give me a sec.
She hung up and clapped her hands.
People, Sergeant Janice is going to tilt the shade. Let's move out of the way.
To her continued surprise, the residents did as she told them, hurrying indoors.
Why are they following me?
She thought.
I'm the most suspicious person in the building.
Yeah.
No, I am.
I also love how, like...
Suspicious Jones in the background.
Suspicious Jones has always been very suspicious.
An outlier and who commits 1,000 suspicious acts a second. An outlier and should not be counted. After helping Mr. Kendrick inside, Josephine took one last look up. The shade was large and heavy. Tilting it a bit shouldn't be difficult, but not crashing it down might be. Josephine sat on the stairs next to a large family. The kids were clearly getting sleepy, but this might have been exciting for them. One little girl stared at Josephine with her big almond eyes. She was maybe 4 or 5. Josephine smiled at her. She responded by turning away and cuddling close to her mother. It was very quiet for a while. Josephine could hear the traffic outside. All the drama unfolding in their little building, their struggle for water, none of it concerned the outside world in any way.
Just about everyone in the city was either asleep or working a night shift, and no one knew what was going on.
Just like we wouldn't have known or cared if this had happened to someone else.
Josephine thought. Yeah, she's coming around. She'll get there. This had been her plan, she remembered. She had never spared a thought for the people who would have lost their homes to make way for the future. Her plans had been concerned with the building, not the people. And yet this was the way things had to be. This was progress. But did progress always come with such a steep cost? And did it have to? A loud noise snapped her from her musings. Was that an explosion? The noise was immediately followed by a shrieking creak that made her cover her ears and cringe. Ugh, that is pretty cringe. The children began sobbing. The creak came together with a gust of wind that shook the windows and the glass doors. An old poster on the entrance came loose and flew away. The shade was tilting and pushing air down as it went. Her watch buzzed again. It was Ronnie. Come out and play, kids. The shade's been tilted.
Is it safe?
Quite possibly.
Ronnie.
Just kidding. I think it should be okay. I'll go around the roof and make sure it's not broken any more than it needed to be.
All right. Thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you for coming up with this plan. What's the next step?
Next, we pray for rain.
They had to pray for a while. Though the sky was covered in dark clouds, there was no visible signs of any rain. The night went on, the residents slowly went back into their homes.
Oh, dear God, please give us rain,
Josephine thought. She was wandering all alone in the yard, watching the newly cleaned trash containers as they sat in the center, waiting for water to pour down and fill them. This had been the one weakness of her plan. Collecting rainwater only works when it, rains. Billions were spent annually to collect moisture above the city and its farmlands. Every now and then the system worked, sending a downpour that could last days. If only it worked more often. She saw Ronnie by one of the gates.
What are you doing?
Sealing the doors. If this water thing works, who knows how Nepthys will react.
Come on, they're not gonna bust in. We're not under siege, just under pressure.
Do 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 bum.
Hear that?
Oh yeah, I love Ice Ice Baby. Ronnie gave her a look that mocked her naivety. I tried ordering a car full of water canisters from a market. They wouldn't sell.
What was their excuse?
They didn't make any, just said that they aren't allowed to sell any drinkable liquids to suspicious individuals.
So now they're embargoing us.
Seems that way. Look, I think your plan is good, but do we know what to do next?
I hadn't thought of it. I just thought building this water system would bring the people together, and I don't know.
You wanted them to stop blaming you for this. Josephine sighed.
Yeah, that too.
Well, we might be able to outlast Nepthys, but we really need a victory. If there isn't any water in the morning, someone is going to start thinking about selling.
And if one person does, another will soon follow.
We need to boost morale.
Yeah. Wait, I have an idea.
Josephine opened her watch and dug up the company messages. What are you doing?
They've asked us to sell the building. I think we should reply to them.
This is not the direction I expected this game to go in, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Chapter 2, Career Suicide.
Do we know how many chapters there are?
I don't. Big cities are amazingly fast. The police showed up within half an hour. They had corporate security with them. Almost immediately afterward, the media caught the whiff of a story, and a few reporters began appearing on the scene. The police were insisting that the broken shade was a security hazard and that any water collected in the trash cans would be contaminated. Ronnie wisely refused to let anyone enter the building, conducting negotiations from the gateway instead. It had begun early in the morning. The residents had worked late into the night, but were still quick to get up and see what was going on. Josephine and Ronnie, having stayed up all night, gave them a simple instruction. Everyone was to reply, "We won't sell," to Nepthys, to let them know they were all in it together. Of course, Nepthys had already guessed that. Wait. Were there lyrics in the music just now, or did I hallucinate that? Why else would they have put an embargo on the residents? Now they just wanted to subdue the people quickly. But sending that message together had felt like a victory to the people. Sticking it to the enemy had raised morale.
There are lyrics.
Oh, I wasn't hallucinating it. As there was still no sign of water, Josephine told the people to make their plight famous. The residents used every media tool at their disposal, as well as going old school, making banners and turning screens into neon signs that hung from the walls. Over the course of the morning, the residential building turned into a resistance fortress. The walls were covered in bright colors and sported slogans against corporate tyranny. None of it had any effect whatsoever. Aside from a few curious onlookers, no one seemed to notice. People walked right on by. After all, it wasn't their problem, and they had places to be. But the fuss did catch one group's attention, the police. At first they came with just one armored vehicle and observed the building. Then not long after, private security units began showing up as well, surrounding the building with large armored vans. Bright neon warning signs appeared at and traffic was directed away from the scene. Masked security guards with guns scared away the curious onlookers. But they also attracted the press. From the window, Josephine could see shivering figures who seemed incredibly out of place with their cameras and recorders. They were looking for someone to interview, but the security guards wouldn't speak. The besieged residents couldn't, and the police were absolutely clueless. All the reporters could do was wait. Wait for someone from Nephthys PR to show up, Josephine realized. As long as it didn't rain, time was on Nephthys' side. What was it that Francis had said? Control of water is the most effective way to subdue a population. Josephine was beginning to see what it meant in practice. People who cannot wash or drink will yield eventually. The thirst was already getting to the residents. They were talking less and bickering more. Ronnie was making them cover windows and blockade the doors. It was mostly to keep them busy. Someone should speak to the press.
Yeah, but how? They won't let us.
We could at least give them a face. Give someone a megaphone and speak out of a window.
I take it you don't want to be the face of this.
I'd rather disappear entirely. You could do it.
Yeah, but I work in the water industry. This will kill my career.
If your career is to make people homeless, maybe you should reconsider. Hey, someone said it!
Yeet.
Someone said it!
Your career was to kill people and call it fireworks.
Hey, whoa, whoa. No need to lash out. We're in this together.
Sorry, I'm just really thirsty.
Me too. My mouth is dry and this headache's a bitch.
Dehydration sucks. Hey, let's use that.
Use what?
Us. Film everyone. The children and the elderly. Put it up somewhere and show that we're suffering.
I like that. I'll ask around and see if someone has a camera.
Thanks. I think I'll go lay down for a bit. Staying up all night was a bad idea.
Do that. I'll get someone to handle the filming. Josephine scoured her fridge for something to relieve her thirst. Finally, she found ice cubes. Sucking on them made her feel better. Then she fell asleep. I'm loving this so far.
Yeah.
Everything about this is just, like, the best kind of aesthetic. Ronnie had never really gotten to know her neighbors. Why would she? Her home was just a place for her to sleep in. But as it turned out, they were actually quite nice people. Mothers, clerks, retirees, even a couple of other vets. She'd always hated the couple that held huge parties just above her place every weekend. Now that she'd actually spoken to them, she realized why they had so many friends. Both the men were really friendly. One of them was playing with all the kids right now in the warm afternoon sun. Mr. Kendrick, by the far the oldest person in the building, was playing cards with the other old people. The yard was still full of people. Some had even brought their screens out so they could keep track of all the news channels. So far, no programs had mentioned them, though. There was something comforting about it all. Ronnie was making rounds and giving orders. She felt like she was back on the force again. She kept a careful eye on the security guards. The cops were harmless, but corporate guards always had guns. There's so many layers in this. I love this. I feel like we need to have a new section on the channel for capitalism fucking sucks, huh? I probably know some of those grunts, she thought to herself. All the exits to the building had been sealed with furniture. The makeshift barricades made her feel more secure. She knew it was stupid. If someone really wanted to break in, they would find a way. And when that happened, there was nowhere to run or hide.
Sergeant Janice.
What is it, Mr. Kendrick?
Who was that pretty young engineer again?
You mean Miss Lace? Josephine?
Yes, her.
What about her?
Well, could you find her?
She's resting right now. Is there something I can help you with?
No, I'm quite comfortable. It's just that she's on the news, and she might be interested in that.
Wait, what? Ronnie rushed to the nearest screen and frantically turned up the volume. Josephine woke to the sound of water. At first she thought she was dreaming, but no, she was feeling dizzy, sure, but the sound was real. She got out of bed and realized she was still wearing her shoes. Now she could see it. Her shower was dripping. Just a drop every couple of seconds, but it was there. It's going to waste, was her first thought.
Have I become this desperate so fast?
Was her second. She scrambled to the bathroom and slammed the buttons on the wall, ordering a shower. As soon as she heard the pipes roar, she burst into laughter. A thundering jet of steaming hot water came from the roof, soaking her all over, clothes and shoes and all. It felt so good. The warm water caressed her face, and finally she began to think clearly. Why was the water back on? Had they won? Maybe they'd gone public. She knew Nephthys would realize their blunder and retreat. Now all they had to do was negotiate. Her next few days at work would be tense, though. She heard a loud banging at her front door, followed by a frantic abuse of the doorbell. She left the shower on and went to it, not even thinking about the fact that she was soaking wet. Behind the door was Ronnie.
The fuck are you doing? I was in bed.
Is your bed a swimming pool?
Dripping water woke me up. I guess I got a little excited.
That does look fun. Well, that aside, Josephine, they promoted you.
What?
Ronnie didn't bother to explain. She just turned on Josephine's TV. You know what? That's one of the most unrealistic tropes ever, and yet I love it every time I see it. Good morning, Channel 411 Metro News. I am Chris Rivers.
I lie. The stuttering reporter is very good.
Seashells sold at record numbers on the seashore. Oh, these are good. Hold on. Advanced AI works at telemarketing for one day. Oh no! This is great! 50 Hues of Grey wins lawsuit. Returns to English. Returns to English curriculum?
Oh no!
Oh, this is terrible.
And I'm Tina McAllister. Good evening.
First on the agenda tonight, do you know who brings the water to your glass? Nephthys Incorporated, the company that makes our showers run, is launching a new department.
The city's water supply, which has been struggling to deliver for several years, was transferred to Nephthys only 2 days ago. In an exclusive video interview with CEO Francis Brabeck, we are asking how they will manage.
Good evening, Mr. Brabeck.
Good evening, Chris.
The acquisition 2 days past marks a watershed moment. Watershed.
Good one.
in how we get our water. What drove Nephthys to make this decision?
Pun intended, Chris?
Nah, they call it out. You bet it was, Tina.
Thank you, Chris. Like all things in a market economy, this process began with demand. People of this city need clean water, and they need more of it than the city can provide. Water is a basic requirement of life, and we cannot watch from the sidelines as people go without it due to a bloated bureaucracy. Efficiency has always been our trademark, and we want to improve the lives of everyone.
You have referred to this purchase multiple times as democratization of water. Could you explain this term to us?
But of course, Tina, the way I see it, what happened 2 days ago was that people won back the control of water from the government. What could be more democratic than that?
Well, some activists have argued that privatizing public property erodes democracy rather than increasing it.
I have heard those claims, Tina, and my understanding is that they have been made by a small, radical minority. Most of them seem to be politically active students who oppose progress and innovation on ideological grounds. However, I understand their reservations. But the people they should be concerned with are the bureaucrats who care more about keeping their well-paying jobs than actually doing them. If the control of water is in the hand of politicians, it can be used to further their agendas. We have no agenda. There is a demand and we supply. It is never in our interest to deny water to anyone.
But just to play devil's advocate...
Thank you for this clarification, Mr. Brabeck. The responsibility you have assumed is a huge one. Is Nephthys up to the task?
I am proud to say we are. Water infrastructure is a crucial element of urban planning. It is our top priority to not repeat the mistakes of the public sector. To that end, I am pleased to announce the creation of our new Humane Water Department, which is tasked with ensuring that our distribution system is fair to everyone. And heading up this new department is one of our rising stars and an expert in ethical business practices, Miss Josephine Lace.
It hurts.
Miss Lace is known for her strict commitment to the highest principles. In that way, she represents a new wave in corporate culture. Pun intended.
Oh god, they put her on TV. Well, I know I'll be sleeping better at night, now that I can be sure my shower will work in the morning. Congratulations to Josephine Lace for her big promotion, and thank you for this interview.
Thank you, Chris and Tina. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise, Mr. Brabeck, likewise.
On to our next story. Could this new innovation, costing just $100, change your life? Stay tuned to find out. The answer is
No.
probably no. She was speechless for a while.
How did they get Francis there? He is too smart to not see through this. Oh, buddy. Oh, pal.
Okay. You know that guy?
He's my boss, the one who
What?
asked me out yesterday.
Well, it looks like your boyfriend is with the enemy, and the enemy is trying to divide us. Suddenly, it was hard for Josephine to breathe. Could Francis be in on it? Could it be that Nephthys wasn't going to back down?
I'm the only one whose water is back on, aren't I?
Haven't checked, but my guess would be a definite yes.
This is bad. Is it everywhere?
On every channel. You need to get out there, talk to the neighbors. In dry clothes.
No, there's no hiding that my water works, but they may have made a mistake.
How? This is genius. Now everyone thinks you're still with Nephthys.
Well, I haven't been fired yet.
Trust me, no matter how this ends, you will be. They've realized you're leading this resistance.
Yeah. Anyhow, as part of their genius plan, they've given us water. Do we have garden hoses?
Yeah?
Spray some on the yard. They're thirsty. Water will get their attention. We have to start storing this. I bet it won't last long.
Ronnie's watch buzzed. Wait a sec. Oh crap.
What is it?
Happy Veterans Day. In honor of those who have served in the nation, we have launched our program to help veterans reintegrate. You are eligible for applying. We salute you. Nephthys. Today isn't Veterans Day.
They're offering you a better deal for the apartment.
Yeah, I bet they also have special offers for the elderly and big families and whatnot.
They only need half of us in one to sell. Then they'll have a majority in shares and can evict everyone else.
We need to hurry.
No, I need to hurry. You take a tall glass from my kitchen and get a drink of cold water, then go get the hose. Oh, and one more thing. Thank you for not thinking I was a mole.
If you really were one, they wouldn't tell us. Josephine stormed out, leaving Ronnie standing in her apartment. She shrugged and went to the sink. Why are you wet? Is it true your water's back on? Someone asked as soon as Josephine got to the yard.
It is, but listen, the promotion is fake. They're trying to divide us.
Or maybe you're really one behind this, you and that mercenary, an old woman yelled.
You mean Ronnie? She's retired from the service, and she's worked hard to keep us together and safe.
Well, if you're not a trainer, then tell me why I shouldn't sell. I'm a single parent with 4 kids. They made an amazing offer. I can move uptown.
They're trying to get some of us to sell so they can throw the others on the street. What about the other families? They would be homeless.
Well, if we all sell? Josephine bit her lip in frustration. She couldn't believe the residents would fall for such an old trick. Everything Nephthys had done suggested they would only buy the apartments they had in order to gain their majority. To many, that just sounded like there was no time to waste, especially now that there was a much better price to be gained. She would be on the streets no matter what. The promotion may have been on the news, but if Nephthys was playing like this, her career was over.
Don't you see? They're trying to divide us because they're afraid. They can only keep this building under siege for so long before someone begins to ask serious questions. And when that happens, Nephthys will have lost. They can't afford to screw up the water reform. They've made too big a deal out of it.
How are we supposed to believe you?
Just trust me. We're winning this.
And also, don't tell everyone to get water.
We just have to...
My children are thirsty. Your plan failed.
There will be rain eventually.
What if it comes too late? And then water began falling down upon them. It wasn't rain, of course. It was Ronnie spraying the water from Josephine's apartment with the hose that ran through her own. Ronnie hosed the entire yard, soaking anyone close with ice-cold water. Their screams turned people around. In their urgent need to make us die of dehydration, Neptus has chosen to give us water. Come up and drink. Someone laughed, and soon others joined up. The situation began to defuse as people now focused on the suddenly available water. A thirsty mass of them began to flood towards the stairs. Ronnie continued spraying with the hose, smiling all the time. The kids loved it, and their parents hoisted them on shoulders so they could get water. Josephine had never felt so relieved. Her heart was still pounding.
Wait.
As one, the mass of thirsty people turned around and glared at her with murderous wrath.
Stop by your own homes first and bring all your bottles, buckets, and kettles. Take as much as you can store and make many rounds if you must. If you have freezers, fill them with ice. The children will drink first.
A thunderous cheer followed by laughter filled the yard. Then everyone scrambled for their apartments. Very soon, Josephine was the only one standing on the grounds. She had won this round. If Nephthys hadn't made the mistake of turning her water back on to make her look suspicious, she would not have. She was about to go to her place and help organize when someone tugged her sleeve. A small elderly woman dressed up in warm furs and wearing pearl earrings. Everything about her suggested she used to have wealth. Her clothes must have been expensive when she bought them, but they were clearly old. She carried no new technology.
What is it?
I'd hate to lose my apartment. I've been renting it to make money. I'm not even supposed to be here. I was just cleaning it up when this started.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Could you put in a good word for me at the company?
What company?
Nephthys, I sold my home just like they asked, but I want to keep renting it. It's my only income. Tell them I'm a decent woman, will you?
You did what?
Not so loud, Miss Lace. We have to keep the secret.
You fucking idiot.
Calm down. I got a good price. Listen, my son is in business school. Could you perhaps arrange an interview for him at Nephthys when this anarchy is over?
Sure, absolutely. Listen, which apartment is yours?
A14. Now my water came back on as well, but I don't really...
A14 has water too. Head there if that's closer to your home.
Miss Lace, this is very improper. You may do what you wish, but I will not let these people into my apartment.
You betrayed us, you moron. You can bet we're gonna pump as much water from your apartment as we can before they turn it off again.
But I thought...
Josephine grabbed her by the shoulder a lot harder than was necessary and stared into her eyes.
You thought wrong.
Don't be a landlord, kids. The old madam from A14 did her best to protect the apartment that was no longer hers, but she was just one old woman and was quite literally carried out of the way, and not in an excessively friendly way. As she couldn't exactly be expelled from the compound, Ronnie guarded her on the yard. She was smart enough to wait in silence. Meanwhile, the rest of the residents formed lines at the doors of the two apartments. First they waited with bottles and buckets, then with kettles, boxes, and eventually even plastic bags. People ran between their own apartments and the two water sources, carrying either full or empty containers. As Josephine had suggested, freezers were filled with water that could be frozen by morning. Some put buckets in there, while others just poured it straight in. The division had been overcome. People were much better inclined to trust each other now that they were no longer thirsty. It took more than 3 hours for Nephthys to realize that what was going on and cut both water sources. But by that point, the spirit of cooperation had prevailed, and as good neighbors do, those with more freely gave to those with less. By the time the old woman could go back to her apartment, it had been vandalized. Josephine was not happy to see the graffiti on the walls or the broken furniture, or the fact that most of her stuff had been nicked. It was a shame. A14 had been a nice apartment on the second floor, with windows looking out onto the streets. Now it was a ransacked mess. But it did feel sort of justified. And in any case, the shared crime tightened the group. In a very school bullies fashion, Josephine reminded herself. By nightfall, everyone had had their share to drink and had at least something in reserve for the next few days. As there wasn't much food left in the building, the residents formed small groups that cooked together using whatever they had in store. Josephine ate together with Ronnie and Mr. Kendrick. Turned out Ronnie could make incredible, albeit very spicy, food. The former sergeant smiled and whistled as she stir-fried rice with coconut, curry, and bits of tofu and a ton of spices. Josephine watched her lower her guard for the first time. Ronnie always looked like she was ready to jump at anyone with lethal intent. Seeing her relax made Josephine loosen up, too. Besides, Ronnie was really cute in her childish enthusiasm for cooking. She's got an apron now!
But she's wearing the apron over the leather jacket.
She's wearing the apron over her jacket, though! Is that meant to be more like an Akira jacket or something?
Maybe.
Like, it's about ready. Josephine, would you get the plates? I have some wine in the fridge, but I think it's more appropriate if we celebrate with ice-cold water today. Every one of them was ravenous, so for a long time they ate in complete silence. The food was heavenly, wave of taste, sweet and hot, and somehow pleasantly mellow at the same time. Ronnie was a soldier, but in Josephine's mind, she should have been a chef. Mr. Kendrick was clearly not used to spicy meals, but didn't complain either. Silence continued, interrupted only by the sound of chewing and drinking. From somewhere else in the building, they could hear laughter and music.
This is not right.
What isn't? Something wrong with all the food?
We won today, didn't we? When I was in the service, the only time we'd eaten in silence were when we'd lost men.
We did lose someone. A14 and the woman there.
Desertion doesn't mean losing strength. You only lose the ones you couldn't have trusted when things got rough.
Agreed. Miss Lace, I must commend you on this victory. This siege is going better than any of the ones I ever was in.
Where did you serve?
Metropolitan Guards. That was a time of pure anarchy. Poor people were being pushed downtown, and some of them took up arms. We spent many a night shooting up sewers and alleys and buildings just like this one.
You ever feel like you were on the wrong side?
Only once, we were in the sewers trying to catch a group that was using them to sneak uptown and blow up rich folks.
You didn't think they needed to be caught?
Oh, I did, without a doubt, but there was more to it. There were refugees in the sewers, people who were to be evicted down from the hills. We tried everything: infiltration, denying them food and drink, divide and conquer. Their leader beat us every time.
Must have been some man.
It was a woman, and a young one at that. She reminded me of you, Miss Lace.
Me? I don't blow rich people up. I'm really hoping to get rich one day. And I'm fighting so that I don't have to live in the sewers.
But you inspire them. Even when everything points to you being a traitor, you've kept them on your side.
I got lucky.
Trust me, it isn't just luck. Your plan has given us hope, and now we have water to last for days.
Mr. Kendrick isn't wrong, Joe. It's a miracle that only one person so far has given in. Josephine had never been called Joe before. It seemed way too casual for her, but she liked it. All this flattery made her squeamish, though.
How did you beat the rebels in the sewers?
We flooded them with tear gas and shot them as they got to the surface. That is the part I'm not proud of.
So that's absolutely about to happen, like 2 chapters down the line.
Oof.
I'm sorry I asked.
No need to apologize, my dear. A man should stand by what he's done. I couldn't, so I left the army.
Ronnie stared at her plate like it was the most hypnotic thing in the world. Then she looked at Josephine for a while, as though she was desperately trying to come up with a new subject. What are you going to do after this? I take it you'll be without a job.
Well, I thought I wouldn't be until I saw my face in the news. They've targeted me. Guess I'll look for another engineering job. That's what I was trained to do. There are other water companies.
Where, though?
In other cities, mostly.
I was fired this afternoon. Security officers are expected to show up to work in the morning. You know, if the siege was in any other building, I might be down there outside carrying a gun and wearing a mask.
I take it you would be doing what you were trained to do as well.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, I guess I would. If I don't find another security job, I can always join the army again. They never stop needing people with my training.
So neither of you pretty ladies will be here to keep me company afterward. Now that's what I call a hollow victory.
Damn it, Kendrick. As Mr. Kendrick spoke, it finally began to dawn on Josephine that there was no going back. Her career was gone, and Nephthys had all the power. Only a very brave company would hire someone on their blacklist. She saw that Ronnie was having similar thoughts. The 3 of them sat in grim silence, eating the food that somehow tasted less good after these realizations. The only sound was rain drumming against the windows. Wait a minute, thought Josephine. It was raining. Her eyes widened and she stared at Ronnie, who was much slower to realize what was going on. When she did, Ronnie spat out her food. It's raining! They scrambled for the windows and opened them hastily. They were greeted by a wet gust of wind and the sound of thunder. It wasn't just raining, they'd been hit by a storm. Others were opening their windows too. On the other side of the yard, dozens laughing and shouting faces gazed onto the courtyard. The The shade umbrella was directing a river of rainwater straight into the trash containers. The yard had become a giant square-shaped waterfall.
It's working.
She and Ronnie began to scream in excitement, and soon found themselves hugging in their soaked clothes, all the while laughing hysterically. Mr. Kendrick approached, slowly as he always did, with the face of a puppy dog who had just discovered snow. Laughing even louder, Josephine and Ronnie embraced the old man, who began to laugh as well, with a warm, boyish smile on his face. Josephine and Ronnie rushed down to the yard to see their handiwork up close. The concrete was being bombarded by the heavy downpour, and puddles were forming wherever the ground wasn't even. Many others had come down too, carrying their last empty pots and canisters. But mostly they had come to wonder at the great water tanks they had built. The umbrella brought down the rain in a smooth veil that condensed into rivers in the air, and all the rivers emptied into the tanks.
It really does work.
No one could tell in this weather, but Josephine was crying. She had studied engineering for years. She knew all about how water could be harvested, transported, sorted, and used. She knew how Roman aqueducts had worked. She studied mined cisterns as well as the sewers of London and Chicago, and the great baths of Mohenjo-Daro. After graduation, she had designed mining operations, irrigation systems, the water pipes of skyscrapers, and finally an entire city's water supply. But this simple contraption that only needed gravity to work was without a doubt her masterpiece. People were patting her on the back, but she hardly noticed them. Then her watch buzzed. She checked the message and frowned. Ronnie was approaching, this time with a very playful look on her face.
In a minute, I have to take this.
Josephine rushed to the eastern gate. Aside from Ronnie, no one noticed her enter the relative safety of the gateway. There was a barricade here too, made out of cardboard boxes full of bricks from the basement, sand, and even old magazines. Ronnie had known what she was doing, Josephine thought, before she remembered that Ronnie probably had a lot of experience tearing down roadblocks. The barricade was built almost to the ceiling, but there were gaps in it for poking curious eyes with sharp sticks, as Ronnie had put it. Behind the barricade, there was a man.
Ms. Lace, I'm glad you came. I have to say this is not how I imagined our first date.
Me neither. Francis, you have to make this stop. These are good people. They don't deserve this.
I thought we agreed on the plans, Ms. Lace. You knew someone was going to lose their home because of them. This is a megacity. There aren't any free spots of real estate to be used. It's progress. Have you lost faith in what we do?
This isn't what we were supposed to be doing.
You know the saying about making omelets. This building is the eggs. You should come with me.
Where to?
Uptown to your new job. Didn't you see the news?
Of course I did. That little announcement could have gotten me lynched.
Josephine, have they threatened you? If that's the case, you must come with me.
How could I leave them now? They believe we can win.
You wouldn't be leaving them. The promotion was real, Josephine. The board wants to avoid things like this. I want you to make sure our company stays on the right track. Think of how much more good you could do in the gardens. We've already set up your new office. It's just across from mine.
On the top floor?
Just like all the other department heads, your new salary would let you live right next to the gardens. And you could help people. Including your neighbors.
How?
The board realized cutting the water was a mistake. We can offer the residents generous rents in our other properties. All they have to do is sign a
non-disclosure agreement?
No. All they have to do is move downtown and promise not to sue. We've just bought some new apartment blocks right next to the power plants, and they can apply.
I'll take the job.
You will?
Yes. As you said, water is a human right. I'll start my work here, helping these people. It is immoral that you would cut their water to pressure them. Everyone here must have the chance to negotiate the sale of their home without pressure or extortion, and we must buy every apartment.
Every apartment, but the law only requires 51%.
Then the law sucks. You want Nephthys to act morally, don't you?
Of course, but in a business sense.
It is good to be known as the kind of company that doesn't throw people to the streets.
Josephine, I'm not a dictator. I can't just walk over the board and make deals that hurt our profits.
And what's the purpose of my department if anything I propose can be struck down by just yelling profits?
Josephine, you must be sensible. This transition is going to hurt some people. We can only minimize that pain.
Then let's minimize it. Do you hear the rain?
I hear it, I see it, and I feel it. Why?
We just filled our water supply. If this siege goes on, Nephthys is going to start looking like the villains sooner or later. Since I am your leading expert on ethical business practices and the head of the Humane Water Department, I've given you my suggestions for defusing this standoff and maintaining our moral integrity. I recommend you take my advice and use your magic charisma on the board.
Josephine, please, just come with me and meet the board yourself. We can have dinner afterward.
Thanks, but I already ate. This situation is pretty critical concerning my job, so I think I'll remain on the field for now.
She gave him a defiant look and then the most innocent smile she could muster.
I'll gladly dine with you when my workload eases a little. Can I get a rain check on our date till then?
Francis said nothing. His expensive suit had been ruined by the weather. The rain was battering the streets behind him.
Pun intended, of course.
Ah, it's my favorite running gag now. And then she walked away, dizzy with her newfound confidence.
Oh dear,
She thought.
am I really a rebel leader now?
Out in the yard, many people had removed their clothes and were distributing soap. Some had brought out laundry or dishes. The news said the rain's gonna last until tomorrow, and now's the best chance to shower.
I already showered. I could use some champagne now.
I just realized how they're gonna put some gas in the air above their apartment and contaminate the water as it comes in. She pointed to one of the doorways where some men were popping open bottles of wine and champagne. Some of the people were clearly already drunk. Overflowing with happiness, Josephine joined the celebration by helping an old woman wash her plates. Whatever tomorrow would bring, the community they'd built today would weather it. For many residents, tomorrow brought a devastating hangover. The celebration had continued until well into the night, but mostly inside in the end. Standing outside in the stormy weather was one of those things that was great fun for a little while and then very quickly unpleasant. Josephine was among the last in, making sure that all the old women got their laundry and dishes done before retiring, shivering, to her apartment. Once there, she, Ronnie, Mr. Kendrick, and a few others celebrated with wine, beer, and champagne, vodka, and some dark booze that Josephine didn't quite recognize. She fell asleep shortly before dawn, happy and drunk. When she woke up, everything hurt. Turning on one side made her nauseous, but lying on her back made her head spin. The headache was indescribable. With great effort, she rose to a sitting position and looked around. There were empty bottles and cans everywhere. Good,
we can store water in those.
she thought. Ronnie was asleep on the shower floor, lacking a blanket, but wrapped in several of Josephine's winter coats. Josephine laughed at the sight, but that made her nauseous again. She ran into the toilet to throw up. She was there for some time. When Ronnie finally came to, they had to take turns for a while. Soon enough, life won, however. The two drank water by the gallon and ate a hefty breakfast. After coffee, they felt better. The building was very quiet. Josephine wanted to check the water tanks, so she and Ronnie wandered down to the hallway to the elevator. Her big worry was that the tanks might not be waterproof. One little hole could undo their victory. To Josephine's great surprise, the yard was full of people, but no one would go near the tanks. The water tanks were standing full to the brim with fresh rainwater, but they were surrounded by a wall of armed security guards. Clad in gray riot gear with their faces covered by protective masks, all of them pointed assault rifles at the crowd. There wasn't a police officer or reporter in sight. The entire yard stood frozen in absolute silence. It was still raining.
What is this? This building is private property. You have no right to be here.
One of the security guards turned to her, then put on the mic in his helmet.
We have been called here to protect the property of Nephthys Incorporated from any and all threats by any means necessary. And you may do that. Nephthys Incorporated owns apartment A14. I can show you to it, and you can protect it from within. You are mistaken. We have been ordered to recover all the stolen water resources that rightfully belong to Nephthys Incorporated. The water in those tanks is rainwater, and rainwater is no one's property. You are mistaken. Nephthys Incorporated has purchased all water in the city. They cannot buy the rain. They have. No law prohibits this practice. This has to be illegal. I'm gonna call the police. You're breaking the law, asshole. Stop breaking the law, asshole.
That'll work. That'll work.
You are mistaken. Our unit has been deputized to aid the police department in its efforts to end the rampant rioting and vandalism in this district.
Wait, so you're the police, effectively?
Correct, miss. Please stand further back.
Security officer turned up the volume in his mic. A loudspeaker somewhere relayed his words.
Residents, please return to your homes. Officers of the law will now proceed to demolish all roadblocks. Then we will visit every apartment to confiscate any stolen water and arrest all suspected thieves. Anyone found guilty will be subject to eviction.
Ronnie pulled Josephine back. How are we this hungover?
How is that your primary concern?
Yesterday there was nothing to drink in this building, and this morning everyone has a headache. Think!
Are you saying someone brought the booze here?
Yes, and there's more. I don't recognize everyone here.
How is that important? Hundreds of people live here.
I mean, there are faces I've never seen before. Anyone could have snuck in during the showering and celebrating.
How? We blocked all the exits.
Then it hit her.
A14 has a window to the street.
And a resident who hates us. I think we might be in danger.
We'll be fine. There's no way this behavior is going to stand up in court.
These people aren't real police, Joe. I think we can get out through the basement.
No way we're leaving now. They've stepped over the line.
Mr. Kendrick appeared next to them.
I think Sergeant Janice is right, my dear. You two should get out of here. I'm not leaving all of you. Then do it for us. If they arrest you, you can't keep up the fight. Janice can protect you.
Old Mr. Kendrick had never seemed so resolute or lucid. Was he somehow no longer senile?
Mr. Kendrick, I am Captain Kendrick, and you will pull back now. We've lost this battle, but we need you to win the war. So go, before they take you.
There was a gunshot. People screamed and ducked for cover. Josephine turned to the doorway to see a man standing at the entryway to staircase A with a smoking gun in his hand. Death to the police! The man shouted before firing again in the air and running back inside. Josephine rushed back to the front and waved her hands. This was getting out of control. That man definitely did not live here. The guards instantly released the safety on their guns.
Stop! Let the police pass. The shooter fled inside. We don't want any harm to anyone. There's no need for violence.
She couldn't see it, but she could have sworn the guard smiled.
You are mistaken.
The guard shot her in the chest. As he fired, all the other guards joined in, spraying the yard with bullets. Screams and gunshots formed a deadly choir that echoed the walls as bodies began to fall. Mr. Kendrick grabbed Josephine and dragged her towards the doors. He was gunned down halfway. The old man fell on top of Josephine. The last thing she saw before her vision went dark was the guards turning over the water containers. All the water they collected washed out over the yard and into the sewers. The shooting continued. Some tried to get out of the building. They were met at the gates by a new wave of guards shooting at them. There, the single mother who had 4 children died. 2 of the children didn't. The guards followed the people indoors, keeping up the fire. Miss Thatcher was shot in the hallway. All her 15 dogs were killed later in her apartment. The young woman in apartment B14 was still in bed when her door was breached. She panicked and ran for the window, but was tased to the floor. She was among the lucky few who were just arrested. Out in the yard, the bodies piled up around tanks. An eerie quiet reigned. It was all over in a few minutes. Anyone still alive huddled in the corners, waiting for arrest. There was blood everywhere. It formed puddles where the ground was uneven and filled the cracks in the concrete. It mixed with the rainwater that was still lingering around the clogged-up sewer entrance. Whatever had begun there 2 days ago was now definitely over. Jesus, that took a turn.
Yeah?
The room was empty and reeked of chemicals. There was a small window, but almost all light came from the ceiling, which was one huge, cold lamp. There were 9 beds in total in the room. Josephine awoke in one of them. She wasn't in pain. That worried her. Her bed was comfortable, but the sheets had a plastic feel to them. Directly across from her was a black screen with green numbers. The last number went up every now and then. Her brain felt like someone had poured cement all over it. For a while, all she could do was watch the numbers. 51456.89, 51456.90, 51456.9. Is that her medical bill going up?
Ha ha ha! Ha! Oh no!
I know this is very much an American thing to assume, but holy shit. Slowly she began to form lines of thought. She realized she was in a hospital and instinctively put a hand to her chest. Cold metal met her fingers where flesh should have been. A slender tube came out of it and went somewhere. She grabbed it. I wouldn't touch that if I were you. That tube is keeping you alive. Josephine turned to see a friendly-looking man lean over her bed. God, he takes up the whole screen.
Where am I? How are the others? And who are you?
Try to stay calm. It'll take you a while to come to completely. You are at the Jenner Private Hospital. You were brought here by ambulance some 4 months ago.
4?
She didn't finish the sentence. Speaking hurt. Try not to talk much. Here, have some water. Josephine drank from the glass that was offered to her. Somehow drinking water felt like sacrilege. You might not remember it, but you were caught in an exchange of fire between the police and a group of domestic terrorists. You were gravely injured.
I remember all right, just a bit differently. What about the others?
I can't give you any names, but from what I saw in the news, fighting was fierce in the crowded yard and the narrow corridors. Police took no casualties, but it's believed that all the terrorists were among the 57 killed. 72 more people were injured, such as yourself.
57?
The loss must be heavy. In case you're interested, we offer quality therapy, both private and group sessions, at affordable prices.
Shut up. I need to think. Is there a list of casualties? I want to know who I lost.
I'll see if I can't find you one. Now, about your injuries.
Who are you? How long do I have to be here?
Please listen. As I'm saying, I'm Dr. Norbert Maturana, a cybernetic specialist.
Cybernetics?
Based on your wounds, you were shot in the chest with an automatic weapon at extremely close range. It's a miracle you aren't dead. However, we had to replace part of your lungs, several arteries, bits of 4 ribs, and your entire heart with cybernetic implants.
My heart?
Yeah, the operation was difficult and had to be completed in multiple stages. We were thus forced to keep you in a coma for most of the past few months. I'm glad to see you're fully woken up and seem lucid. Now, if you let me do some basic tests.
Wait, what is that?
She pointed at the box with numbers that she had been watching. Oh, that's a new feature in this section. It shows your hospital bill in real time.
Ha 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 ha.
Sorry, I'm a little better now. Try not to get stressed out by it. I can also cover it if you want.
No, it's fine. Do your tests.
She'd been shot. All her neighbors were either dead, in jail, or out on the streets without homes. She'd spent 4 months in a coma. Neptus had run out of legal ways to fight them. Instead of backing down or paying a bit extra, they decided to kill everyone. Francis must have known this would happen. Francis must have made the call. The man who asked her out had ordered her murder 2 days later. The world thought it had been terrorists. She was now a cyborg with no job, no home, and thousands in debt. And all she could do was lie on a bed and stare at the bill as it grew. 51458.2. 51458.3. 51458.4. Damn right she was getting stressed. That's a fucking... Oh my god. That's not how I expected this to go, but this is great.
Yeah, me neither. I definitely did not figure that was the turn.
I did not think it was going to go that hard. Let's take a quick recording break.
Yeah.
Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
We'll come back for some more of it afterwards. Hey, thank you again to all of our patrons for supporting us another month. Your continued support for the channel means a lot to us, and it means we get to do more stuff like this, which is a lot of fun for us to do.
It really is.
Yeah. We'd like to give some special shouts out to the patrons in our I'm Jacked In tier, including Lupine Pariah,
A Wheel Baron,
Carlos David Barrera,
The Fighting Doll,
Alice Demore,
Alyssa Clarkson,
Brian B,
Frosty Dragon,
Mercury,
Reyna,
and Snow Flurry. If you want to support the channel, you can do that at patreon.com/8br. Supporting us at any tier gets you access to all the Patreon exclusive episodes, including our Let's Play of the first Ace Attorney game, which is ongoing at the moment, and you get to see all the Patreon potpourri episodes a month before they become available on the main channel. Those who support us at $5 a month or more also get to vote on whose games we play every month. So for series like this, where at the end of the month we'll play a new indie creator, they get to vote on whose game goes here in this slot. So yeah, if you feel like supporting us, that's always awesome to do. I'm giving you a thumbs up right now, but you can't see it.
I'm giving you a thumbs up and you can see it.
Oh, what? Oh, God.
smash that like, comment and subscribe.